Welcome to your journey of healing with the Healing Podcast, hosted by licensed clinician Monique Owe and co-host Dr. Amber Mohn.
Thank you for tuning in to the Healing Podcast. I am your host, Monique Owe, and I am joined by my lovely co-host here,
Dr. Amber Mohn.
So Dr. Mohn, guess what? Do you know today is...
What's today?
Our year anniversary.
Yeah.
We have made it to a year. Well, tomorrow will be the exact date. But we have made it to a year of recording the Healing Podcast. Can you believe it?
No, I cannot.
Well, look at us. We are here on this journey, and we're hopefully helping people heal a little bit, get some little information to help them think about some things and to do, hopefully that'll help them cope with some things as well.
Yes.
And, we do want to remind everybody, the Healing Podcast is not therapy. It can be therapeutic, but it is just a podcast where we're sharing our thoughts and those of any guests. But it is ultimately up to you to decide if anything we're sharing, if it's maybe tugging at your heartstrings or if you want to apply something. That is ultimately up to you. And this is not what therapy is like. This is just a discussion per se. Therapy is more focused on you. But I do want to thank you, Dr. Mohn, for still being here with me.
Absolutely.
And for doing the Healing Podcast. And I don't know where time goes.
I know.
Because here we are at the year mark. Like, I feel like it was yesterday almost where it was like, okay, trying to get things together and do things and record. But here we are. So today's topic, forgive, but not forget. Interesting. Now, we've talked about forgiveness before.
Yes.
And we know forgiveness is our own release. It is for us.
Yes.
But Dr. Mohn, so what do we mean by forgive, but not forget?
So, we just mean that forgiving is not just for the other person. It's for the forgiver. One thing we don't want in life is to carry unnecessary grudges and anger and hurt about what someone else or other people have done to you. So being able to forgive them, to move on, and to release all of those emotions and feelings is important. But when we talk about, but don't forget. So like my parents would say, don't be no fool. Meaning, don't forget what a person is capable of. Don't forget what behaviors and things they've shown you. Because it says a lot. It doesn't mean that a person can't change. But, what you do is you just keep that thought in your mind in case they come back and show you that they have not changed. You won't go through those same things that you went through before. You'll do things differently. You'll create boundaries because you haven't forgotten. You've forgiven them, but you haven't forgotten what they're capable of. So that's what it means to me, Monique.
Okay. So, and just to piggyback over what Dr. Mohn says, many times you always hear forgive and forget. You're supposed to forgive and forget. I think, one, let me be honest, it's hard to forgive and forget because, forgiveness, once you do the work to forgive, and you realize that's for you more so than them, forgetting about what happened, that's difficult, especially if it was something very traumatic or painful. It's not that you're remembering about it every day and you're keeping a tab like, you did this to me in 2000. Yes. And, I don't forget, but it is just a thing that in the back of your mind, this person did at one point in time do something that was either hurtful or disappointing to you. So it just means, right, like Dr. Mohn said, just have a little reminder in the back of your head. It might mean it might take you a little while to do the same things with this person. It probably has changed the dynamic in your relationship. I am going to say this, even when you decide to forgive and release, now sometimes you cannot be around that person ever again. But if it is to where you can go back around that person or you have decided to interact with them again, you have to understand the dynamic might be different. If we used to always do everything together because you were my best friend and we did all the things together and we spoke about everything every day, well, now it might not be every day. It might be every now and again I talk to you and we can have a great time when we talk for hours, but we won't be doing that every day anymore because of that reminder. You did something pretty major to me. That reminder they did something to you that was pretty either damaging or took you a while to get over for you to be able to deal with it. So that's what I believe. The not forget part is not keeping a tab. It's just that little scar. You know how when you cut yourself or you hurt yourself, you burn yourself, you have the scar. It's healed. Probably doesn't even hurt anymore if you touch it. But you look at it and you know what that was. You know what that scar is from. So it might be a reminder, hey, don't touch the stove again because it burned you. Don't touch the curling iron because it burned you. Be careful when you get near it. It's not that you're keeping tabs of the curling iron of the stove, but let me be cautious when I get near it. So I believe the not forget is to be cautious with this person. You can still have a great time with them if you choose, but just proceed with caution. You're right. They don't get to know every intimate detail like they knew before.
Right.
They don't get to have access to your accounts like they did before.
Right.
They don't get to borrow your car like they did before, right, Dr. Mohn?
Right.
So I think that is the forgive and not forget. But, Dr. Mohn, is somebody wrong for having that concept of forgiving but not forgetting? Would that be wrong of them to do?
No, not at all. You're saving yourself a whole lot of heartache and pain. And it's not, holding a grudge. I feel like if you are able to truly forgive someone and release that stuff, what's wrong? What's the harm in not forgetting? Just because you changed or, was a bigger person doesn't mean that person who did something to you is. We think about who we should, forgive and, but not forget with. Let's talk about family. Like you can't just, you can just eliminate your family altogether and not come around. But, that's difficult, especially if it's siblings or your mother and your father. Like you want, to have a relationship with them if you can. So a lot of times you have to practice forgiving, but not forgetting and creating those boundaries. It's not just easy just to throw them away like it would be like a friend or somebody you don't really have history with. So
yeah, I think that's true. I'm glad you brought up family, Dr. Mohn, because it is complicated when let's say you have to see family. Let's say you could probably avoid them for a good time, like not go to every function, not do every event. But at some point, you might have to see that family member. Let's say, for example, a funeral. You might have to see that one family member that crossed you, that sibling that crossed you and that hurt you. So you have to face them. And the forgiveness part can be, I can be cordial.
Yes.
I can say, how are you? Hope you have a good day. I can still acknowledge the loss because it's your loss like it's mine. But we won't be talking beyond that. And I think that's a sign, too, of forgiving, not forgetting. Like, yeah, it's enough to where I can talk to you now. I could probably even ask you about your day, how you coping.
I can be in the same room without putting hands on you.
Exactly. Yeah. I can be in the same room with you now, but we won't be going beyond that. And and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think people get so caught up with you're supposed to forgive and forget. But I don't think that necessarily means that. That doesn't mean you forget everything this person did to you, because the person could have really did something damaging, really painful, or just something very hurtful. And they have not apologized. They have not acknowledged it. And that's a whole different thing, like I said. But it's a matter, have you released it to the point I can put you in that box? Right. It's no issue. And if we do decide to be cordial again, we will be cordial enough. I can joke with you, might even talk to you about a favorite show. But we're not talking about anything else. When they start to get a little personal, so what's going on in your life? No, everything is good. It's it's nothing else to discuss, right, Dr. Mohn? I think that's a sign of forgiving and not forgetting.
Yeah.
Because that person did sting you. They did. They did something that you didn't expect. They did something that hurt you. So I think it's the reminder of the scar, right? It's just be mindful of what they did and move with caution, right? I would not, Dr. Mohn, I don't know, and I'm cautious when I say this. I don't know if you fully trust, I guess it depends on the person, fully trust that person again once they've hurt you to that degree. Now, I say that with caution. I don't know, is that true, Dr. Mohn? Do you fully ever trust them again?
I think that it depends on what the situation is.
Okay.
I really do. I think it's situational, Monique. I mean, some things that happen to someone that you can remember, we're talking about forgiving not for them, but for us. So, depending on what the situation is, what they did. Like my thing, okay, let me give you an example. Say your cousin stole your man and they're married. Okay, guess what? Well, let's take the marriage out of it. Just say she stole your man. Okay?
Okay.
You're going to let her, you have a fiance now. I'm not letting my cousin around my fiance. I can trust him from kingdom come. But my thing is, when she's around, we together. Not that I don't trust you, but I don't trust myself, because if I even see her trying to, but I'm watching her. I'm watching her every move at the picnic. I just am.
Okay.
So
that'll be.
I'll never trust her around anybody. So it just really just depends
what they did.
Yeah.
So I think, for example, if a spouse, let's say there was some form of infidelity in some form, right?
Yes.
You forgive them. You worked on it. Therapy. It's not coming up anymore in arguments. You guys have moved past it. Do you forget about that? I think you try your best to forget about it, but I don't know if you forget about it. No. But that doesn't mean you don't trust him to go out, to have to go on a business trip. I think it just means if you see the signs again of the behavior.
Yes.
I think the not forgetting makes you more alert.
Yes.
Like, because maybe before you didn't recognize the signs.
Right.
But now, since you're more alert because you didn't forget, you now know, well, here's a sign. So before it gets out of hand again, or that happens, let me address it.
Yes.
Hey, it looks like, again, you're not responding to my text. It's taking you a couple hours to respond. Or, well, wait a minute. I don't think any spouse. If you're a spouse out there, I don't know if it's supposed to take you a couple hours to respond, but that's a whole different topic.
Right.
Unless you're somewhere on a pilot on a plane, you can't take. I don't know. Maybe
how about? So here it is. At 2:00 in the morning, you come back home, smell like Ivory soap. Or Irish Spring soap. After you went to the club, something ain't right.
Something's not right. So there's the sign.
There you go.
But so I think it's more of an alert.
Yes.
It's like an alert, like a warning. Like, okay, wait a minute. Let me ask you, why did this happen this time? Versus before, you might have been oblivious to it. You might have ignored it a long time until you found out they were cheating. But now you can nip it in the bud, hopefully in the beginning, so that it can be addressed, or you can decide, wait a minute, so we have a bigger issue here. So again, that's about the forgiveness and forget. You can still be together, still have a happy marriage. You can probably even get past it. Doesn't get thrown up in their face anymore. But you just, when the reminder comes or the alert, you're like, wait a minute, it has to be addressed now. So I think that's another sign of forgiving and not forgetting, because if you're just holding on to it, that's a problem. Yeah. If you're fooling yourself and thinking that you've forgiven someone beforehand, that's a problem, because you're just trying to convince yourself you've forgiven them. I think you just have to remind, proceed with caution for a little bit. Just proceed with caution. And before we continue to discuss this topic, we'll go ahead and make a segue here and get into, you guessed it, the situation. Dr. Mohn, what's our situation for today?
All right. Dear Healing Podcast, I have been in a relationship for the past year. It is going great. I do not have children, but he has 2 teenagers. His children primarily live with their mom. He sees them regularly. Also, every other weekend. The children also get along great with me. The topic of marriage has come up a few times. We both want marriage, and I love him. The thing that sometimes gets me to second guessing are the children. Not about me loving them, etc., or being in their lives. I'm thinking way ahead. For example, if something were to happen to their mom, God forbid, he would get custody. My concern is, am I ready for something like that to happen? I don't doubt I would be a great mother. However, since I did not have kids of my own, I am not sure I want to be a mom full time. I wrestle back and forth with this. I'm afraid to share this with him because I don't think he would understand. He may think I'm rejecting his children. When I'm not, I'm simply wondering about future possibilities. Am I overthinking this since none of this has happened, or do I have valid concerns and should consider breaking things off? Thank you for writing for that today. That's a great question. I really think that you should address this with him. This is a great concern. It is important that you guys talk about these things before you go, especially with kids, and whether, because things happen. And so then you would be not stepping into her place, but you would have to parent those children if they came to live with you. And so I think that this is something that you should at least talk to him about, because he may have an issue with that. He may not want to go any further because he wants, you all in. And what you're saying is that there's a portion of you who is not quite all in. That might take time. And he might say, hey, maybe, might give you some time to really think about this and come to, terms with, or on whether you're ready for something like that. So that's what I would say. I definitely think that you need to talk to him about this.
Okay, so thank you for writing into the Healing Podcast and for sharing your situation. Are you overthinking? No, I don't think you're overthinking. I think it's a good thought. I think this is something you have to think through. If you're involved with anyone that has children, you should consider the fact that, yes, you might end up being the caretaker of the children. That it depends on if that happens. Many times it doesn't, but sometimes it does. Whether something happens to the other parent, whether they pass away or just become ill to the point where they can't take care of them, or maybe financially the kids have to come with you because maybe that parent is going through a struggle. The other parent, there is the possibility anytime the person has children that they are going to become your children full time. And you have to ask yourself, do you want to deal with that? I don't think it's can you. I think you said you would be a great mother, but it's do you, because you said you don't have any children and I don't know what your story is. So maybe you becoming a full-time parent will be too much of a reminder why you don't have your own children. So you do have to give that thought. I think you should discuss it with them. Don't be fearful. If it's meant for you guys to get over that hump, you will. If it's not, if this is the thing that's the roadblock, then that is good to be found out now versus later on after marriage and it becomes a bigger issue or leads to a divorce. So I think it is not an overthought. I think you should talk to your current significant other about it. I hope that is helpful to you, and thank you for sharing. If you would like to share your situation, go ahead and email support@thehealingpodcast.com or go to thehealingpodcast.com and hit the contact tab, and you can send it in that way. Now a word from our sponsor, Healing Expressions.
Are you someone who has been considering therapy? Perhaps someone else has told you that you need to talk to a therapist. Or maybe you're in a relationship and you want to discuss some challenges that you've been facing with your significant other. Maybe there's a communication issue, perhaps an incident of infidelity. Or maybe you just want to strengthen your relationship because you guys are thinking about taking another step. Maybe you're struggling with anxiety or depression, perhaps grief, life stressors, and you just want to share your thoughts with someone. Well, consider contacting Healing Expressions. Healing Expressions is a private practice located in the Atlanta, Georgia area. You will be given a session at an affordable price with a licensed therapist. If this resonates with you, consider going to healingexpressionsllc.com, reading about the practice, and hitting the contact tab to see if you can book a session. All right. Thank you so much. And back to the Healing Podcast.
Okay, back into the topic, forgive, but not forget. Well, let's talk about it. I'm not of the school where you should forgive and then automatically forget. I know that's what people say you're supposed to do. I don't think you're supposed to keep tabs of people of what they did. No, if you're going to decide to have them back in your life, I don't think you can keep tabs because that can cause a tear in the relationship anyway. It's not a keeping tabs thing. I think if you decide, I think first you have to make a decision. Is it worth having this person back in your life? Because some forgiveness means it's forgiven, but it's done. We are no longer going to interact anymore. And that's not a problem. That's protecting yourself. That's moving forward. For those that you continue to interact with, because maybe it is somebody, maybe it is a spouse, and it wasn't worth getting a divorce over, and you didn't want to, but they're still there. It's just remember that reminder. It's, if I recognize the sign again, once we work through it, let me address it beforehand so it doesn't happen again, hopefully, right?
Right.
That is the forgive, not forget. I think you just have to consider you, right, Dr. Mohn? I think, is it hard for people, you think, to forgive and not forget? Or do you think the alternative is harder, to forgive and forget?
I think the alternative is harder, to forgive and forget. You're never going to forget what a person has done to you, just not. So I definitely think it's easier to forgive but not forget.
Right. I think so. I think forgiving and not forgetting is a protection for yourself. It's a protection for your emotions. It's so that you can move forward in a way that's best for you. And just remember, the not forgetting part just might mean, again, you don't interact with them again. That is your reminder. You just don't interact. You don't throw it up anymore. You're not thinking about it too much. But you remember what this person did to you, and it was hurtful. Because you are going to have those times with some of those people that you have forgiven, where you're just going to be forced to be around them. And I think that happens a lot with family. Friends, you probably could. I don't have to see you again. But family, at some point, you're probably somehow going to run into them again, unless you cut off that portion. So, it's possible, but just be mindful. To protect yourself, it's a matter of learning how to be cordial with the person, but not have any interaction. But then again, you know what another thing is? You might decide, my forgiveness is, I don't speak to you, even if we're in the same room.
Right.
I'm here. I'm not going to go off on you. That was my part. But we don't talk. I don't have to acknowledge you. You don't have to acknowledge me, and I'm okay with it. That is another sign of forgiving and not forgetting, I feel. So, Dr. Mohn, any other things someone can do to forgive and not forget? Is there anything they can do to do that or to help them with that?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay. I'm going to say, talk to someone about it, though. If you're holding something, make sure you go to therapy. Well, we're always going to promote therapy, so we will say that. So I hope this episode is helpful. Let me just say this. You know what? One of our first episodes was forgiveness. I just want them to say sorry. And then I did one when I addressed, it's not just the sorry, so you want them to be accountable. Because it's not the sorry. Because even in that first episode, we discussed it's not as simple as, okay, I said sorry. I hurt you, I said sorry. That's not good enough. They have to be accountable for that behavior sometimes. You want them to acknowledge what they did to you. But sometimes you don't get that. So this is another portion. When you forgive, but not forget, it's the reminder. I can release it, but I just have to keep myself in check of what happened. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
So forgiveness is not this one simple thing. It's many layers. I think many layers. Would you say, Dr. Mohn, many layers? Okay. It is. All right. So before we go, I'll leave you with this. I forgive people, but that doesn't mean I accept their behavior or trust them like I once used to. Okay. And that is by idlehearts.com. idlehearts.com. So I thank you for your support. We thank you for tuning in. And we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.